At 4:57 a.m., the calculated force of federal authorities shattered the darkness that stretched across the American Northeast. Under a quiet sky, units from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, executed simultaneous entries into various warehouses, private residences, and concealed facilities across 4 U.S. states, initiating an operation of enormous magnitude. This event was far more than a typical drug apprehension. It represented the culmination of 6 months of covert monitoring. Encrypted tracking devices, GPS records, and hidden cameras targeting a massive, industrial-scale cartel operation. Investigators, following gathered intelligence, had located not merely a simple storage house, but a comprehensive logistics center, fortified like a bunker and specifically engineered for mass distribution. This was not a reckless strike, but a precisely designed snare. Agents had followed coded communication, intercepted protected shipments, and charted container routes until the optimal moment arrived. The network received its devastating wake-up call before dawn, as federal agents, weapons drawn, made contact with concrete and metal. Yet the real revelation lay inside. What agents discovered beneath the warehouse floors and behind concealed walls would fundamentally change existing assumptions about cartel operations within the United States. Before continuing with the particulars, if you're unfamiliar with this channel, please hit subscribe to the Military Power channel so you won't miss our complete analysis of the mission and the more significant threat it brought to light. The FBI and DEA had spent the preceding 6 months constructing an intricate web of hidden monitoring. Using triangulation to pinpoint signals from shipping containers, encrypted mobile devices, and GPS-tagged truck convoys, a clear pattern emerged. A single distribution center was quietly supplying a network that reached across 14 U.S. cities. Mapping this infrastructure, investigators understood that the supply chain was significantly more extensive than the minor stash houses encountered in prior cases. The operation was set in motion when cryptic shipments began arriving at seaports and truck stops, though seemingly harmless. They triggered warnings within federal intelligence units. Containers moved from the border zone, traversing under the radar cross-state paths, and ultimately reached a particular warehouse in Pennsylvania that distinctly stood apart. Initially noted as a generic industrial building, this location soon became the focus of months of secret observation. Cameras recorded vehicles arriving at unusual times, personnel in plain clothes, and trucks departing with GPS logs indicating perfect punctuality, no delays, no errors. The sheer volume and efficiency suggested an operational logic more commonly associated with legitimate logistics corporations than with criminal groups. Simultaneously, agents intercepted a series of communications that suddenly went eerily quiet. Active phones fell silent without warning, an unmistakable sign the cartel organization was preparing for a significant transition. The silence itself spoke volumes. These were not spur-of-the-moment deals but meticulously coordinated moves into a subsequent phase of distribution. Federal analysts labeled the Pennsylvania warehouse the central node, yet they suspected it was only one of 3 main hubs within the U.S. maintaining the flow. With all the evidence gathered, the trap was ready. Detailed financial documents and leasing records exposed shell companies renting the space under false names. The facility appeared to be a genuine business from the outside but concealed an infrastructure for illicit supply. Truck itineraries, timing sheets, and driver logs were obtained through court-approved surveillance and wiretaps. The result was a traceable map of 14 drop points nationwide, each connected to the Pennsylvania hub. The federal assessment was unequivocal. This was not opportunistic trafficking, it was industrial-scale coordination. And then came the definitive moment. A hidden camera, discreetly aimed at a side entrance, captured an unplanned, raw event. A heavy hatch lifted, revealing the entrance to a tunnel. The moment resembled a spy film, but it was chillingly real. In that instant, the dynamics shifted. What agents had perceived as an unusually large warehouse proved to be a fortified node with underground entry, camera feeds, and secret exits. With this footage confirmed, the decision was made. The raid would proceed, timed for the darkest hour. However, as investigators prepared their assault, they understood one key fact. Eliminating this node wouldn't terminate the network. it would inflict a severe impact and cause instability. But the model of 14-city distribution and multiple hubs would still require constant vigilance. The American public needed to see that their federal agencies were not just reacting, they were striking at the core of the system. That piece of footage showing the tunnel hatch opening affirmed it. The snare had been sprung. When the breech doors swung open at the main warehouse, the teams entered a space that looked more like a high-tech factory than a stash house. Long lines of machinery hummed quietly under strobe lighting, and conveyors moved brick-shaped packages with systematic rhythm. This industrial-level packaging operation ran continuously, leaving no doubt that the organization behind it was neither amateur nor disorganized. It was structured for high volume and speed. Behind one of the false walls, federal agents discovered an entry point to a subterranean complex. A narrow passage led downwards past reinforced steel doors into a deep tunnel. At the bottom was a hidden elevator, built into the floor and concealed by a heavy metal hatch. It was a facility engineered for secrecy, mobility, and command control. Within those corridors, the cartel's logistics capability rivaled that of legitimate large-scale warehousing networks. And then came the main hall, containing more than 3.1 tons of narcotics packed into shrink-wrapped, industrial-style crates, each one stamped with the cartel's emblem. These were not random baggies hidden away but clearly labeled, tracked units prepared for distribution. Finding such a quantity in one location revealed the extent of the operation's sophistication. Further inside, agents unlocked a door marked, Operations Room. Inside, a whiteboard listed the 14 U.S. cities acting as drop points, with checkboxes and times next to each location. A rotation sheet pinned to the wall detailed drivers and their shifts, regional coordinators, and contact codes. On the floor, a rack of servers quietly hummed, running 24/7 encryption software to ensure that dispatch orders, routes, and financial transfers could not be easily intercepted. This level of organization left investigators astonished. The network seemed less like a criminal sideline and more like a logistics enterprise with military-level precision. The presence of a dedicated command center within a warehouse highlighted the seriousness of the threat. This was not about random trafficking but about a sustained infrastructure that moved product from entry point to market with careful planning, timing, and backup systems. U.S. federal authorities had successfully uncovered a cartel node whose complexity matched the supply chain operations of large corporations. That contradiction underlined the danger of the operation. One federal source likened the discovery to entering a scaled-down distribution hub: pallets, forklifts, concealed entrances, scheduled movements, and coded logistics. It became clear that this warehouse functioned as a fulcrum, a central pivot linking the flow of narcotics across states. By dismantling it, the U.S. agency struck at the structure of the network, not just a single shipment. Yet, the most troubling question arose as the agents surveyed the crates and blueprints. Why would a criminal organization operate like a legitimate logistics business? Why invest in tunnels, elevators, encrypted servers, and shift rotations? The underlying reason for the raid became starkly evident: the faster the flow, the greater the profit, and the more capable they were of evading detection. The warehouse's complexity revealed the cartel's aim to scale, integrate, and institutionalize its activities. The distinction between organized crime and corporate supply chain was blurring. As the teams prepared to secure the evidence, lock down the facility, and make arrests, one thing was certain: they had reached the heart of a machine designed to move drugs in massive volume and escape capture. The level of sophistication exposed inside that warehouse confirmed the intelligence reports from months earlier. This was not a random stash location but a fortress of commerce for the cartel. That reality made the ensuing raid not merely a law enforcement effort but a calculated strike into the anatomy of a criminal enterprise. When federal analysts finally accessed the server stacks and routing logs within the warehouse, the data fundamentally changed the entire investigation. The data revealed a clear hierarchy of roles: drivers, coordinators, regional managers, node controllers, not random couriers, but a corporate-style chain of command. The movement of narcotics through U.S. territory was mapped in incredible detail, revealing how one central node quietly orchestrated delivery across 14 different cities. The chain of command was documented not only internally but also appeared in dispatch logs captured during court-approved wiretaps. Drivers were assigned coded routes. Each route linked to a specific shift and destination. Coordinators scheduled the movements. Regional managers oversaw clusters of drivers and drop zones. Node controllers were above them, monitoring performance and risk. In short, this was logistics management on a criminal scale. Comparing the GPS data, every truck's departure and arrival time aligned almost perfectly with the schedule stored in the database. No delays. No deviations. No visible errors. This precision alone told investigators one thing. This network was built to function as a system, not a gang. One analyst described the pattern as assembly line trafficking. The trucks left the Pennsylvania node at hour zero, passed through pre-planned waypoints, entered states during scheduled windows, and arrived at warehouse drop points precisely on time. The logs showed one route with a departure at 2:14 a.m., transit across 3 states, and arrival at 8:47 a.m., within 1 minute of the predicted time. That level of efficiency is not achieved through luck, it's achieved through engineering. The financial trail broadened the scope further. Investigators matched lease registrations to shell companies that had signed multi-year contracts for warehouse space, vehicles, and equipment. A company named Mid-Atlantic Logistics Incorporated paid for the Pennsylvania facility under a front identity, and the truck fleet leasing was formally managed through another shell entity. Bank records showed substantial cash infusions into these companies, followed by transfers overseas. These were not isolated transactions, they were planned and documented. Leasing under false names concealed assets and encrypted communications. The cartel wasn't simply engaging in theft, they were replicating corporate structure. The 14-city grid extended beyond just logistics. The whiteboard found earlier in the operations room listed locations such as Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York City, Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, and Phoenix, spanning regions, coasts, and the Mid-America. Each location had a code, a shift schedule, and a driver roster. These drop points served as terminals for distribution to street-level crews or as interim nodes themselves. The network reached into the core of American markets, moving contraband with deadly efficiency. According to the 2016 U.S. National Drug Threat Assessment, Mexican transnational criminal organizations maintained distribution cells in cities like Phoenix, Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago. What federal agents uncovered here simply amplified that pattern with far greater scale. The discovery forced a somber realization for U.S. law enforcement. This was not a brief supply chain, it was an enterprise engineered to survive, adapt, and expand. The sophistication displayed in the warehouse was duplicated across the 14-city network. Every move, every vehicle, every bank wire, and vault code was accounted for. Analysts compared it to a shadowed logistics network, built underground but multi-layered and resilient. And yet, even as the camera footage, server logs, and GPS tracks were secured, investigators knew they weren't confronting the entire operation. They concluded the Pennsylvania site was only one major node, and at least 2 more were operating quietly elsewhere in the U.S. The unexpected truth was that the warehouse they had just breached was not the sole headquarters, it was only the first they had uncovered. That realization intensified the urgency. Striking this one node might disrupt the network, but it wouldn't dismantle it completely. Other hubs were likely prepared to fill the void. For U.S. federal agencies like the FBI and DEA, this meant a continuing strategic battle, targeting not only material assets but the very architecture of the cartel's distribution mechanism. In that moment, the 15-minute operation inside the warehouse revealed a narrative far broader than a single warehouse bust. It exposed an organizational blueprint for illicit trade that extended deep into America's interstate highways, bypassed detection through legitimate-looking shell companies, and embedded itself firmly into domestic urban markets. So, for the viewer, the question becomes critical. If this warehouse was just the beginning, how many more such nodes exist? And which one is next to be discovered? When federal teams broadened their focus beyond Pennsylvania, the scope of this operation expanded dramatically. Deep in Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey, agents uncovered sites that resembled military installations more than backrooms. In one Texas facility, a fleet of trucks awaited dispatch. The chassis of each vehicle had been modified by expert mechanics to conceal compartments built for the bulk transport of contraband. The mechanics had welded hidden cavities beneath floors and behind panels, transforming innocuous commercial vehicles into silent carriers of illicit freight. Investigators faced the harsh reality that they were dealing with a cartel network operating not in random bursts but with engineering precision. In Arizona, a node designed for resilience emerged, a warehouse disguised behind another warehouse. The outer appearance seemed legitimate, but the interior was reinforced with steel bulkheads, surveillance cameras, biometric locks, and secure access control. It functioned like a mini-bunkered fort, a term one agent used to describe how entrances were barricaded. Vehicles queued behind blast-proof doors, and personnel moved in disciplined shifts. Within this complex, stacks of rugged-looking crates bore no innocent labels. Instead, investigators found piles of cash, more than $12 million, bundled and stacked as if ready for the next phase of transit. The sheer scale of the funds linked the network to high-volume commerce, not street-level drug sales. In New Jersey, the operation exposed yet another layer of complexity. Burner phones, encrypted laptops, crypto ledgers, and industrial-grade packing machines all pointed to a cartel enterprise that had adopted high-tech tools to evade detection. Rather than relying solely on smuggling routes and couriers, the network leveraged digital infrastructure to coordinate shipments, monitor performance, and maintain secrecy. Every piece of equipment seized told the same story. Its operators believed they were running a business, albeit an illegal one, moving drug loads, cash flows, and information across state lines with clockwork regularity. Federal analysts labeled these locations satellite nodes, each connected to the main hub yet with sufficient autonomy to operate if the central site was compromised. And the strategy was fluid: disrupt one node, and another could immediately fill the void. Federal agents recognized how the architecture mirrored corporate networks, featuring redundancy, secure communication channels, and contingency plans. The logic of the strategy became clear: as long as you controlled the transport routes, controlled the nodes, and moved money efficiently, you could outrun detection. At each of these sites, the evidence painted a similar picture of scale and sophistication. The vehicles were not mere delivery vans, they were engineered for subterfuge. The buildings were not simple storage rooms, they were hardened facilities with security layers. The cash was not incidental, it was a testament to the business's profits and ambitions. Together, the findings shattered any notion that this was a loosely organized local trafficking ring. Instead, the network had all the hallmarks of a paramilitary logistics machine. But even as agents closed in, they were aware that something critical still lay ahead. The Pennsylvania warehouse had been a primary node, but now the satellites were exposed. The question shifted from, "Where is the operation?" to, "When will the blowdown come?" and, "Which node gets hit next?" For the cartel, this realization marked a turning point. Their structure was under scrutiny, their movements no longer invisible, and yet, they still held firepower in reserve. Investigators believed they had only scratched the surface. The biggest strike, the one that would topple the system, had not yet been executed. Thus, as these simultaneous raids unfolded across Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey, the scale of the threat became impossible to overlook. This was not simply about seizing contraband and money, it was about dismantling a system built to endure. And the pressing question remained: if this warehouse was only the first node, how many more lay hidden and ready? The cartels knew the stakes. Federal agencies knew the mission, and the next move, regardless of who makes it, could redefine the battle. The floodlights illuminated the operation sites before dawn had truly broken across Texas, Arizona, and New Jersey. In less than 20 minutes, the shadow network that had operated undetected for months was in full collapse. Federal agents from the FBI and DEA kicked down doors, surrounded facilities, and executed a coordinated takedown that resulted in the arrest of 142 suspects in a matter of minutes. The speed and precision of the operation stunned many observers and highlighted how seriously U.S. authorities viewed the threat. Inside the seized phones and laptops lay the blueprint of what the cartel believed was a bulletproof plan for the next 6 months. Investigators uncovered distribution schedules slated for the upcoming half-year, detailing shipment volumes, routes across state lines, and financial transfer patterns. One communications log captured a coordinator instructing a driver, "Depart at 245. Route via I-40 until drop at Node 7. Arrival by 817." These types of entries confirmed that the organization did not rely on improvisation. Instead, it functioned like a paramilitary logistics machine. Financial ledgers traced multiple millions of dollars funneled through shell companies, then redistributed to warehouse leases, truck fleets, and prepared cash drops. The data made clear that this was not a small-scale trafficking circle but a complex enterprise engineered for resilience and scale. According to law enforcement sources, this level of sophistication mirrored military-style supply chain systems more than the chaotic networks often associated with drug trafficking. The arrests and seizures marked a significant blow, but U.S. officials were quick to caution that the structure of the network extended far beyond the warehouse they had just hit. The Pennsylvania node had been the central gear, yet investigators believed at least 2 more nodes remained active, twinned with satellite nodes ready to bypass disruption. Intelligence briefs issued by federal agencies stressed that dismantling one node alone would not necessarily end the flow because the backup systems were already in place. As the suspects were handcuffed and led away, and money, vehicles, and data servers were loaded onto tow trucks, one question hung heavy over the operation. Was this strike strong enough to break the chain of supply? Or did it simply force the network to scatter and adapt? For every suspect taken into custody, for every $1 million seizure, for every server wiped clean, there loomed the possibility that the network would regroup and refine. The warehouse had been exposed. The hub had been damaged. Yet the deeper architecture might still be intact. In the corridors of U.S. federal headquarters, analysts pored over the seized data as if reading war plans. They mapped vulnerabilities, traced possible fallback routes, and scheduled follow-up operations. But for the public, the takeaway was visceral. The drugs, the cash, the trucks, the hideouts, all of it demonstrated one vital truth. The United States was facing not just traffickers but a network built to strike, adapt, and move again. With the raid complete and the arrests made, the pressure now shifted to the next phase: how to exploit the disruption, how to follow the money, how to prevent the network from simply shifting its footprint. The cartel may have lost its central node, yet the satellite nodes, the backups, the hidden warehouses, and the encrypted logistics remained a looming threat. The question still remains: was the blow delivered today the one that truly crippled the machine? Or did it merely send it underground, waiting for the moment to emerge again? As dawn settled over the cities where the raids unfolded, the scale of what had just happened became unmistakable. Federal teams had struck at the exact moment when the network was most exposed, dismantling what investigators later confirmed was the largest distribution hub in a 14-city supply chain. According to reports from the U.S. Attorney's Office and documented in multiple news releases, more than 3.1 tons of narcotics were seized alongside roughly $12 million in bundled cash, while 142 suspects were taken into custody in under 20 minutes. These numbers were not just impressive, they revealed how deeply this organization had embedded industrial discipline into its illegal trade. Yet, beyond the figures stood a more unsettling discovery. The warehouse operated with the structure of a business and the readiness of a paramilitary unit, complete with encrypted communications, redundant transport routes, and layered command roles. For U.S. agencies, the success of this operation became a testament to how effective federal coordination can be when data analysts, field agents, and tactical teams move as one. Still, the unanswered questions linger like a shadow across the map. If this was only one of 3 major nodes, where are the remaining 2? And how many hidden tunnels, off-book warehouses, and modified trucks are still in motion tonight? Share your predictions in the comments and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the deeper investigations coming next.